This is part 3 of the Intimacy with God series. My name is Chris Grano. I'm an affiliate staff member of Mayslake Ministries. In the first 2 parts of this series, we talked about ways in which we could become more intimate with God. And the first topic was on prayer and how that is the foundation and the place in which we grow in a relationship, and how that prayer life changes throughout our years. And the second part was on spiritual disciplines, prayer, which is a spiritual discipline, but one of other ways in which God calls us into being connected to God. And this particular part, which we end with, kind of pulls everything together. It talks about our journey of faith. When I studied for spiritual direction many years ago, I was very captivated by the fact that there really is a faith journey that we all are on, that even though we are very unique, is also very similar. And it helped me to understand where I was in my journey. And I think as we look at this intimacy with God and we look at our prayer life and the spiritual disciplines and how things change, it's good to know that the process that we go through is very normal. And it begins with our journey as we begin with recognizing who God is. For many of us that may be some time ago, but for some of us that may be pretty brand new. And after we recognize who God is and we start to connect with people who are of the faith, we begin a discipleship process of learning, of some catechesis, and to understand how God works in our life. And then we get pulled further in, and especially if we're in a church situation, where we become connected to the community and start service in ways that we are called into. The problem with the faith journey sometimes is that many of us get stuck at that faith journey level of the service at church. And God really wants to pull us in deeper than that. Not that that's not a bad place to be, and we will continue with service all the time. But God wants us to come into a deeper place. So we journey inward. In our prayer life, we talked about how we come into a quieter place of prayer. Well, this is where God calls us into deepening this journey in faith. And we get to a place that's inward, and sometimes it gets scary in there, because we are starting to see a God maybe that we didn't understand before. God relates to us in a different way. We may not have the same senses of God any longer. You know, we read Mother Teresa had no sense of God for a very long time, no feeling, after having a wonderful 12 years of experiencing God fully. So sometimes when we don't feel God or experience God in the same way that we did before, we start to get nervous about that and think that maybe there's something we did. But really what it is God's working in that place of quiet. And we might stay there for a while, and then eventually, after God teaches us what it is that we need to know in that place, we then can come back out again into a place of service that is different than the first place, where we're really being called into the giftedness that God has given us. I myself has had a journey from a place of very active service into a place that God pulled things away from me and then brought me back out again into a place that was a little different, but using the gifts that God had given me entirely. And so we move in this journey through those places. And then, of course, the ending of our journey would be with God in full love, which really, if you want to title that last section, is sainthood. But this journey with God just is an ebb and flow back and forth to the places that God will bring us, in and out of these places, to teach us what God wants us to know, so that we can be fully aware of God's presence and in the intimate places that God wants to be with us. So I thank you, and I pray that in your journey that you will really become intimate with our God.